Hello and welcome to Featured Flights. I'm your host, Darren Burrell. The show is about art and how it inspires, evolves, and changes the lives of an audience as it moves through time. I'm not just interested in the work, but also the people who make it. Today, I'm speaking with Vic Hollins. Vic is a talented artist who I met through an online course in 2020. She has a unique style that blends her love of nature and illustration to create original paintings, comic books, portraits, murals, and more. Color, pattern, and desert visual motifs come together to make Vic's work instantly recognizable. We're lucky to spend some time with her today and find out more about her art life, where it began, where it is, and where it's headed. Vic, it's so nice to see you. Hopefully I didn't screw up that intro for you. Thanks for being here.
No, it was wonderful. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. So thanks for having me on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was so excited that you said yes. Like I said, I have some questions prepared and I don't want it to be like too formal or whatever, but I think like what I've learned is that having those questions prepared helps open up the conversation a little bit more to like, other things that might go. And if it's not a question you want to answer, you don't have to answer it. We could just go on to the next or whatever.
I'm an open book. I'm ready.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's go. We'll right into it with the first one. So, okay. So art can be a hobby, an outlet, and a business. And for some, it's just a way of life. Could you talk a little bit about your love of art and what prompted you to pursue it as a profession?
Well, I've never been good at anything else except for art. And I've always loved it. I always just knew it was what I was going to do. It's just a matter of figuring out how I'm actually able to do it. And as you know, it's not easy. Like you can't just sit down and create art and have it fly off the shelves. I mean, maybe some people can, and
not me.
not me either.
Yeah.
You normally got to do all sorts of different like hustles, gigs, different ways of trying to sell your art until you find out what works for you. And sometimes it works for you, but you don't like doing that. So, it's kind of like you gotta try out a lot of different things when you're an artist, and especially if you're a young artist that's just getting into it, it's okay if it doesn't work out the first time. Just shift gears, try a new approach. I've tried so many different ways of selling my art, and I know you have too. You do all sorts of different stuff, and I think it's honestly more fun to do that. But also, like, it makes you a better artist because you try all sorts of different things, and your art reaches people on different levels. So I don't know if that like actually answered the question, but
No, that's great. I think hearing you talk like that, sometimes I'm reminded of like why I even did, like you said, there was no other choice. This is just like what's inside of us, right? This is sort of like, if you believe in God, this is what God gave us as our talent to go on with our lives. But yeah, finding a way to do it is always sort of the hardest thing. And then I think the big thing for me is like not letting it crush my spirit of like the joy of art, right? Like when you have to do it for a business, it's sort of like, okay, now there's a lot of hard things to deal with. And it's like that joy of just creating just to create can kind of get lost, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the most fun part, is making it. But then you got to deal with all the other stuff that comes with it too. And being an artist in today's society, like you wear so many different hats. You do videos, you do your own taxes, you do all these different things that you don't want to do that goes along with making the art. So
I know, I feel like we could do a whole tutorial on like how to set up your business and do taxes. It's so crazy how much you have to learn once you figure out how to be in business for yourself, right?
Absolutely. And us artists and numbers, they don't like really mesh so great together. So
my favorite thing to say is that I failed math 3 times. So
okay, I'm right there with you. I haven't failed it 3 times, but right behind you.
Yeah. And it's so funny because it's like the one thing that I was like, I'll never use math in art, but now I use it all the time to set up things, Okay, awesome. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. So my second question kind of goes into that a little bit more, because it's actually a fun fact that you and I have never met in person before. And if you look back in the email, the last one I sent you when you did the class with me, it was like 2022.
Which is insane. How has it been 3 years already?
I know. That blew my mind. But yeah, so we have never met in person, but I feel like I know you a lot from seeing so much of what you've done, and also just kind of being like a fan of all your art. And my first introduction was being randomly in a class that Dick Blick put on, and I was like, because I was 2020, it was the pandemic, and I was like looking to kind of grow a little bit. I had not done this professionally yet. I was in art, I was doing advertising, but it wasn't like, doing business for yourself and doing art all the time. So I was really interested in learning more. And then I saw this class and I went in. I'm so glad I did, because I got to see you and see how you put on classes. And I really admired your patience and dedication to details in that class. And I wondered, how you got into that and teaching in general, and so it's kind of a two-part question. So how did you get into it and start doing it? And then I kind of wanted to know why it's important for you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to answer the latter first because I feel like I have a shorter answer for it. The second one is kind of a story, so buckle up.
Sure.
But it's incredibly important for me to make art accessible to people. I love sharing knowledge because I think that the more people that make art, like there will be more happier people out there. And especially people that love making art and want to pursue it on a more professional level to be able to live off of it. Like, why not share the information I have with them? And it just makes me feel all warm inside to talk about art, and who doesn't love art supplies? So I just really am so fortunate that I've been able to have the opportunity to be an art ambassador for quite a few big companies now. Because it all started back in 2015. I was working at an art supply store in Tucson, Arizona, and I was putting myself through art school. And I love art, so I made it all the time. I knew how everything worked in the store, and they were like, "Hey, Vic, there's a art convention coming to town, and a major art supply company is going to buy a booth, but they need help selling the products in it, and some of the products are going to be our products. So you're like the employee we want to send to go do it." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I show up at this convention, and I'm just talking to customers, selling the art supplies, and the CEO of the art supply company was there, and he was like, "Wow, you know so much about art supplies." And I was like, "I would hope so. I love art supplies." And like, they're my whole life. I've worked at this art supply store for 4 years. Like, I love them. And he was like, "Do you have a website?" And I gave him my business card. And the next day he came in and he was like, "Why are you working at an art supply store? You're such a good artist." And I was like, "Well, thank you, first of all, but I'm working here because I need to make money and support myself, right?" And he was like, "Well, we have some opportunities, for somebody that knows a lot about art supplies like you do. So we're going to give you a call." And I was like, "Here's the thing. You can't say that to me and not call me. You have to call me." And they were like, "Okay, we're going to call you."
Wow,
So,
I love that.
I know, right? So I kind of fell ass backwards into this. I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss.
Well, no, that's fine. But again, I'm loving the part of the story where you're like, "No, but if you say you're going to call me, you better call me." I love that.
Oh yeah. No, because you're in such a disproportionate power position. Like, I'm someone that really wants this opportunity, and you're somebody like dangling it above my head. And as an artist, you know how many times these situations happen. People are like, "I'll get a huge painting," and then they never call, or missed opportunities. But this is like the one time in my life where the opportunity actually came through. And I just made such a good connection with this art supply company. And all these years later, I'm still with them. But because they took a chance on me and sent me to a couple conventions, I've been able to market. And now I work with, I think, like 5 major art companies. And I just have so many wonderful opportunities. And it's all because I worked at a art supply store and somebody gave me a shot.
Yeah, but also like I talk about this with my girlfriend all the time. It's kind of like showing up and being in the room, you had the opportunity to do that and go and be present somewhere. And I think that's such a big part of this whole thing too, is like actually being there, like to get that opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
Which sounds like it changed your life.
Oh, it 100% changed my life because, you know, I was going through art school and I knew I was working part-time at this art store. But beyond that, I was just like, I don't know, just gonna make art. And you know how it goes, like you just kind of
Yeah.
figure it out. And I had been already doing that for a while.
Yeah.
But no, it completely changed my trajectory on like what I spend my time on. And I've been able to travel to so many places and meet so many people because of it. So it's been pretty rad.
That's such a great story. I love hearing it too, because I think anybody listening out there that is interested in art, this is the thing. Like, get out there and do those kind of things, and ask for it when they say they're gonna do something.
Mhm.
Like, follow through with that. That's my favorite part of the story, because like if you hadn't said that, who knows? Maybe it wouldn't have happened, you know. And then I wouldn't have met you. Like, you wouldn't have had all of these things happen. But I mean,
Yeah.
maybe you would, but we don't know. You know, it's just kind of showing up.
Probably not. And like, I mean, I know LA is like a great place to be able to market with your art and lots of events you can go to and stuff. Tucson is not that unless you want to do like Western art or something more in that realm. So just the opportunity that like I was able to go to this convention was just really cool.
Well,
So
that's interesting that you bring that up. I was actually, again, I was talking with Marianne about this, and I was like, oh man, I want to ask the right questions for Vic, you know. And then she was bringing up Tucson, and she's like, well, like maybe it's oversaturated here in LA, because it can also be very there is a lot of opportunities, but there's also a lot of competition. There's a lot of
yeah.
artists here. And she's like, I wonder what Tucson, maybe since you brought it up, could you talk about the art scene in Tucson a little bit?
Sure. So there's like a couple galleries that I wouldn't quite consider lowbrow, but almost in that vein. And they're kind of more pop-up galleries. But the thing about Tucson is it used to be super affordable to live here, and it is not anymore. And therefore, all the rent of cool spaces and stuff has gone up. So a lot of places have closed. So we have a couple very like famous artists that live here that do Western style stuff. And beyond that, our demographic is a lot older here. So most people just want, the cactus and like that kind of stuff, which is totally fine. We like the desert is a beautiful place, but there's not a ton of a scene for young emerging artists to go to a gallery or anything like that. If there is, it's kind of a pop-up space that like hopefully would last, but probably will not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have things like street fairs where people will totally, set up a booth and do that kind of thing, but it's not like we have like art walks like you guys have,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah. I was always interested in like, and you're not too far away from LA. So if there is like something going on and there's a gallery that you want to be part of, like it's close, and there's a lot going on here, but it's, I don't know. It's interesting. Chicago was way different and LA is way different. And I just wondered what it was like out there,
Yeah, totally. Well, any excuse I have to come to California, like I'm there. I love visiting you guys, and I also love saying goodbye. So
Oh, totally. I know. This place is crazy. I'll tell you.
yeah.
I have, I think the third question, it follows into that a little bit. And I think we've kind of answered some of the stuff. So I'm going to try to kind of nitpick around.
That's cool.
But yeah, oh, so this is the partnership thing I was going to ask, and you've kind of talked about it a little bit. So I said, following along through the years, I've always impressed by the amount of partnerships you form with art supply companies, interested in knowing how those relationships came to be and how you foster them. So I think you've answered that pretty much. But for anybody listening, I think it's important too, because I don't know, this day and age, like finding the right fit for you and what you do. And you said, I work in a lot of different mediums, but like, when you love something and you do it really well, I mean, you could reach out to those companies, right? Like in music, if I love a certain sound of my guitar, I've reached out in the past in my bands and said, hey, we're in a band and we tour around and we would love to be like sponsored by you. And sure enough, like Seymour Duncan becomes a sponsor of our guitars, but it's like about asking for that, right?
It totally is, because I think that not a lot of people do that. They just assume automatically it's going to be no. I don't want to like tell people that they can go on websites and just become an ambassador, because
right.
I know how hard that is. I know so many people that have tried to do it that have not been able to do it, that really wanted it. But the thing about it is there are tons of large companies that I can think of just off the top of my head that have pages where you can apply to become an ambassador. And, just because you're an ambassador doesn't mean that they're going to give you paid work. But if you're an ambassador to their products, they normally give you like a almost like a stipend, I guess, like an allowance that of products that they'll send you per year. And all you have to do is just tell people that that's what you're using. But normally it's helpful to either have a large audience, which I do not, by the way, or have a backlog of artwork that you've created, something different than the artist that they already have, you know?
Yeah.
So I hope
Cool.
that's helpful.
No, that's super helpful. Yeah. And even for me, like, I don't know much about it. So I think this is going to be something that people are going to get a lot out of. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And I'm going to talk to you about social media. This is that. I can't wait to get into that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm actually interested in your relationship with digital art. Do you use the computer or programs like Adobe Suite much, or Procreate or anything like that? And if so, could you give us an example of how you use it and how it's useful, like as a tool to traditional art?
Yeah, absolutely. I really love using digital assets as a tool to create traditional art. I don't typically have a finished painting digitally, but I do have like a Cintiq Wacom tablet, and I use Photoshop and Procreate with an iPad and everything. I actually probably use it daily because I do digital compilations of like compositions. So like, let's say I'm going to paint, I don't know, whatever. I'm just going to paint something. I'll go on Google and I'll collect a bunch of references about it. And sometimes I'll Frankenstein together like a picture digitally. And I like to have style references up. And sometimes I'll even formulate color palettes. And I'm very type A. I'm a very messy artist, but I love to have a game plan. And even if my finished piece of art doesn't end up like my game plan originally started, I like to have a very clear, this is how it's going to look, and hopefully it'll end up somewhat close to what I was thinking. But I love working digitally because you can just undo, or you can scale things or drag things in or delete them. Like, sketching takes so much time and effort, and I love the process of it, but I'm kind of like, drawing is kind of like my guilty pleasure. And when I'm doing things digitally, it's to get it done, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and that's the business side of things, right? It's like using those tools to help you in your, because I'm going to ask you about murals in a bit. And I imagine that comes into play, and it's probably really handy in that. And I also do the same thing. I also like, I want to see how this looks before I actually put it onto the paper. Otherwise, that process could go on forever. You could be painting over multiple times. Then all of a sudden, you kind of get fed up and throw it away. So it is a useful tool that way. I'm glad to see that other artists are doing it kind of the same way as me.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that. I love to hear people's process. So that's very neat.
Yeah, even with the digital stuff, I do so much more nowadays with like taking stuff like in Procreate and drawing there, and then bringing it into like an Illustrator, because a lot of like merch and things need to be set down for screen printing and for color or things like that. And, that's kind of utilizing the tool to know, how it can get done. I can also draw it, of course, and I have done that too, and then put it into the computer. But a lot of times it's easier on Procreate,
Totally. I mean, you can undo things, you can scale things, separate layers. It just gives you a very easy way to play around with things. And like, of course, drawing fundamentals are very incredibly important to have. And it's a beautiful way to make art, just drawing from the get-go. But like you said, if you have a lot of deadlines and you have a lot of things you need to get done, it's a really efficient way to work. So
yeah, totally. Yeah. If you're just like on vacation and you really want to capture the scenery and you've got your like sketchbook in front of you, like, fuck yeah. Right.
Of course.
Like, that's the best. But if you're trying to get stuff done for business, it's a lot faster to do it this way. Okay. So I said I was going to get into the murals. Okay. And we've kind of talking about that. I think that's why I had placed this question next. Because I thought maybe you'd be using that. And I know nothing about murals. So please, like, let us know as much as you want or as little as you want. But I am so intrigued with it because like that's something that scares me a little bit. And like I want to get into it one day, but like I don't know anything. So this is my chance to really pick your brain. And Yeah, so it's been interesting to me to see you do them, and I don't know, you're better than anyone I've seen doing them. And your videos, for anybody out there listening, you have to check out Vic's YouTube. She has these videos that showcase the process of doing these murals, and they're huge and just really cool. So seeing those, I would love to hear you talk just a little bit about the process of preparing a mural and kind of how you procure one in the first place, right?
Sure. Well, first of all, murals are so fun. You have to do it. Do not be afraid. I'm always like a little afraid, like the day or so before. I'm like, oh man, this wall is awfully big. Like this is gonna be a lot of work. And honestly, once you get your line art on there, the hardest part is physically painting it because you don't know how much of your body you actually have to use to paint something that large until you paint it. I mean, of course, there's a lot of different ways to paint it. I typically will have the wall freshly painted, preferably by the client that has commissioned me to paint it, which I will talk about in a second. But
like they would just kind of do the background layer, kind of.
Yes.
Okay.
So, like, if you have a mural, let's say I just did this mural where the majority of the background was purple, so I had them paint the wall purple. But I want like a fresh layer of paint on there. I want it to be nice and clean so that my paint adheres properly. Because in places like Tucson, we have crazy sun exposure and like everything's dry as hell out here. So conserving the paint and making sure it doesn't fade is such a huge aspect. So if you get your preparation down correctly, you can freehand the illustration on there, which I would not do because I am so picky about my composition that I've created. So you can either project it using a projector, which is a really great way to quickly get the image up there. It's basically like the projectors that we had in school. I'm assuming you're about the same age as me.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I would imagine, so people listening, just so you know, when she's talking about using a projector, she's just kind of getting the like very loose, yeah, like you said, like all of the elements onto the background with probably if it's a dark background, probably with white paint or something, right?
Yeah, like a white paint marker or a black paint marker. And it doesn't even have to be super detailed, but I just want the proportions down so that when I go to actually refine it and draw it, everything is the right size. Because when you're working on something smaller, you're able to see the whole thing at the same time. Right. But when you're working on a mural, it's like you have to step way the hell back depending on how big it is.
That's a huge part of my question is like, how do you get that onto the wall in the first place? Because yeah, I can see like there's like steps in the challenge, right? It's like getting that on the wall is like number one. Okay. Like how do I actually like draw it on there? So that's really helpful. And how would you like power something like that?
So it depends, like if you're doing it in a place with electricity or not. My husband's a sign painter, so we do this all the time for his business too.
Oh, okay.
If they have electricity, we'll just bring extension cords and plug it in somewhere. Otherwise, we'll use a jack that goes into the car, into like the cigarette lighter.
Yeah.
Or if you're doing it at a place like a construction site, then you can request a generator, and you can put gas in it and fire it up and project it on there. So it's kind
of knowing the lay of the land of the place that you're going to be at, like whether or not they have the plugs or whatever first.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like a lot of preparation. And I think when you're designing a mural, if you go with less colors rather than more, you're just going to make your life easier. And you just have to think about like what you're painting and how detailed you really want to get with it. Because
do you have to like tell the clients? I'm sorry, Vic. I'm just so interested. I hope I'm not stepping over you.
No.
There's like things like also anticipation for the client, right? So I imagine that they like have questions for you, like how long is this going to take, and all these things, right? Yeah, and you have to kind of figure that out, right?
Absolutely, and they'll normally be like, "About how long do you need?" And normally my answer is, I don't really know until the first day of painting how long it's going to take me, just depending on the circumstances. But I'll normally give them like a window of like 2 weeks. That's how long I need. But, tell them whatever you need. But as far as working with a client goes, you set your expectations and then they tell you what they need from you, like we need this done by this day because we're going to put in something around it, or maybe it's a more chill scenario where they're like, yeah, just get it done, you know? But I think as far as working with a client goes, being able to provide those digital compositions is a really great way to pitch your idea to them and be like, hey, so this is what I'm thinking, but 25 feet wide or whatever, you know? And it'll give them a little bit of an idea about what it's going to look like without you actually having to paint the thing ahead of time. So normally what I will do is, like, I'll ask them what their budget is, and then I'll try to design within their budget if I can. If I can't, then I can't. But, you know, if they have a huge wall that they want painted, but they can really only pay for half of it, then maybe I'll just do like some sort of really simple background for the top half or something. And then I'll charge by square foot for the lower half.
Gotcha.
You know?
Yeah. And you had to figure all this out on your own, right?
Yeah, totally. Like
for you listening out there, it's possible you can figure it out, but you just got to dive in, right?
Yeah, you just got to dive in and just listen to what your client wants for their concept. And maybe you even give them a couple different ideas or different colorways. And I think that's the most important thing, is really listening to your client and being able to adjust your expectations to theirs. Because just in terms of like, I hate to be all about business, but I feel like this is an important aspect to share to people for
please.
murals. Like, you know, I like to offer different price points. Like, hey, I can make this really detailed at this range, or maybe I can do a little bit less detail at this range. And even when I do commissions for people, I'll do that, where somebody's like, hey, I want a 9x12 painting. And I'm like, okay, cool. Here's the price for a 9x12. Here's the price for an 11x14. Here's the price for an 8x10. So I'm like giving them options in terms of prices for sizes. But if they were looking to spend more and I give them a lower price for a 9x12, I can get more for an 11x14, and they can have a larger painting. That, you know, so I think being able to offer different price points and, you know, being able to have a little bit more return on investment for huge projects like murals is so important. Because like they're so fun to paint, but there's so much work too.
Oh yeah. I mean, in the background, that's the thing that I think if you're listening to this is like what I do the same thing. Like, you know, there's so much work of thinking about how do you make this life sustainable. And I'm glad you said not to be so business, because that's actually all of my questions are based on kind of business stuff. And I didn't mean to, I hope it's not that I'm not interested in anything else about you, but I'm really fascinated about how you're making this work. Because I've been watching and it's really growing for you. And it's exciting, you know, especially, and it's inspirational for someone who is doing it too. You know, you want everyone to succeed that's in art, because it is something that's the trick. How do you do it? How do you make this your life? Right.
Absolutely. And it's not easy, and it seems like it's an easy thing to do, but it's just not. And, you know, my husband does it too. So we both do art, and I just want people to be able to do art if that's what they want to do. So
yeah, no, totally. Yeah. So again, I'm sure I'm going to be like DMing you more stuff about
That's
murals
fine.
as time goes by, because like I'm so interested in it. But yeah, again, for anybody listening, please go and watch some of these videos, because I'm going to get into the social media stuff in a minute. I don't want to go there yet with that, but I imagine that's kind of an annoying part of this. But we'll get there.
Okay.
Actually, that is my next question. Okay. Look at the universe giving me that. So, yeah. Okay. So, maybe just one last thing about the mural. How do you procure one? Maybe that's like a stupid word, but like, how do you go about like finding businesses that want one, or do they know? Because what if they don't know about you, Vic, right? Like, what if they don't know that you've ever done one, or maybe you never have done one, but you want to do one?
Interesting. Okay. So here's a great idea. I used to do charity events at this comic book store that was in town, Charlie's Comic Books. And they had a huge white wall on the outside. And I always did charity events for them, was always donating art, bought my comics there. I loved this local business, and they had a huge white wall. And I was talking to the owner, and I was like, wouldn't that be cool if there was a mural here? And he was like, yeah, what do we have to do to make it happen? And so this is one of those times where you're working for exposure, right? But what cost me $50 or whatever, $100 in spray paint, getting gave me the opportunity to do a mural, to try it out, to figure out how it works without the stress of being like, this is a paying customer. And it gave me the opportunity to have a mural in my portfolio. So now I can go to a different business, which I did on 4th Avenue. It's our little like historic shop area, our little downtown area. And I had designed some t-shirts for this local business down there. And I was like, hey, I just did a mural down at this comic shop. What do you think? You have a little wall out here that always has graffiti on it. If you put a mural there, normally people don't put graffiti over it. Maybe they do in LA. They're a
Yeah, they do
nicer.
in LA. Yeah.
They're a little nicer here in Tucson. But they were like, cool, okay, let's do it. Okay, cool. So now I got a paying gig off of my other one,
Yeah.
So I hate to tell artists to do it for free, but for a mural, it's really fun. And if you have even like some acrylic paint at home, I mean, give it a shot,
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing it that way, because for me, like doing some shows back when we would be starting out as musicians was like, yeah, we're going to play this gig and not going to get paid, but it was like, we're opening for a band that's got a bunch of people that like, we want them to like our band. It's the same thing, right? It's kind of like you have to pick and choose your battles that way, though. Like, you don't want to be doing it your whole life is kind of what you're saying, right? But like, if it helps you get on to the next thing, then it's worth it.
Absolutely. And I do hate telling people to like work for exposure. I know it's like the biggest faux pas in the art world, but honestly, I think that I really have gotten ahead from helping people out or like, testing my artistic ability if they're willing to like have me, so I don't know. I think it's worth it.
Totally. Just for anybody out there that's interested too, and like another way you can do something like that is, I always like love being, and that's why I love hearing you talk about Tucson, is that being part of a community where you live, like the local businesses that you shop at and different places, the places you go to, the restaurants. When I first moved here, I really wanted to. That was my biggest thing. In Chicago, it was like a lot of people weren't very friendly, didn't want like a little bit more standoffish, and there wasn't a community really that I was part of. When I came out here, that was really important to me, so I picked a place to live for that reason. And then as soon as I got here, I went to most of the businesses and I said, hey, I did this painting, this watercolor of you, just wanted, I'm a new artist in town, and went around and did that, and I made like so many friendships that I still have today, that could lead, like you're saying, to a mural. Maybe they have an empty wall and they said, oh, Darren was cool, and he gave us this piece.
Right.
Let's try it,
Well, yeah, you made a connection, and that painting, may have just been a painting to you, but that profoundly changed someone's life when you gave that to them, and you made this like forever connection with them.
Yeah. And
you have enough of those in your pockets, like, you're going to be able to make more connections off of that. And it's just good feels all the way around. I mean, at the end of the day, we're artists because we love making art, and money is wonderful. We love having that in our pocket for groceries and art supplies and all the things. Yeah. But, if you're going to make art, may as well just go for it. So
it comes, but you got to do the work, right? You
do.
Okay. So thank you. That was awesome on the mural stuff. When it comes to social media, it can be a useful tool for artists, and I have enjoyed seeing how you use it specifically, Vic. On Instagram and YouTube, I think those are the places where I've seen you the most. I follow a great deal of artists that inspire me on social media, but to me, the way you do it is informative, creative, fun, and to the point. It always seems to be focused on the work. Could you talk a bit about social media and what it means to the Vic Hollins business? Is it something you plan for? And are you intentional about what goes up and what doesn't?
Okay, can I first off start by saying that if I was not an artist, I would not be on social media at all.
Me too. Me too. Okay, I get you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're two beans in the same pod.
Yes.
I love YouTube because not only can I share information, but I feel like I actually have an audience that interacts with me. I do not like Instagram anymore. I used to be a big fan of Instagram, but I've been having a really hard time lately with it. And I think it's because like I have been working with these larger companies to design things lately. I'm sorry for being so vague. I don't want to say anything I'm not supposed to say.
No, of course. Yeah. Please.
Um, yeah, like I've done some stamps and stencil sets, some brush sets, I've been working on things so long ago that are just now coming to light. Like I'm already working on things for 2026 with these companies and I'm not allowed to share it for a whole year or whatever. And then so when it's finally time to share it, it's like I put it on Instagram and I'm like, oh yeah, so excited. And then it's like 4 people and my mom are like, yeah, good job.
Right. It's like a false sense of like celebration or something. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like I'm so excited about it. And like at this point, I don't feel like putting it on Instagram is really sharing it with the world, like how it used to feel to me when I was younger. I don't know if that's like the weirdest thing in the world to say, but yeah, it's weird because I work with these large marketing teams for these companies and they're like, oh, don't do it like that, or we want this instead. And so when I go to market my own stuff, I'm like, I'm just going to do it my way. And then nobody likes it. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Totally. I mean, it's a lot of work too, right?
Really?
Yeah, because I would imagine with the murals, you've got already your hands full, and then you've got to think about like, do I get a drone to like do my process or whatever, right?
Yeah, seriously.
And then all that to like get 4 people that see it. Like, what's the point,
Exactly. And it's like, yeah, okay, so I'm going to paint a mural for 2 weeks straight, and I'm going to film every second of it and make sure my camera's on and see what angle it's, like, is the lighting good enough and do all this stuff.
Right.
And it's like, oh, wow, okay. Does it matter? Like, should I just paint the mural? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I have a very strange relationship with it because I do love editing videos, but I just feel so much more rewarded posting them on YouTube rather than Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I feel too, it's like, where is it working? I love to know that you found the one that works for you. Maybe that's the thing, is like, if you feel like you're banging your head against the wall with something, maybe it's not right for you, right?
Exactly. And I felt that way about Instagram like a year and a half ago. And so I started putting all my efforts into YouTube instead. And I'll just occasionally post on Instagram now to kind of be like, oh, hey, check out my YouTube, or this happened, or whatever.
Yeah.
Here's a picture of my cat.
Yeah. I know. I mean, like, everyone's trying to figure it out, right? And that's the thing, is like, you're trying to figure it out. But there's something about you, and maybe it's because you don't post all the time, or I don't know what it is, but since I've followed you, I always thought like Vic is serious business, There's something to me about that, like that that you love, that this is what you love to do. And that's like, it just comes through with that. So whether you know it or not, that's how I've felt about your social media. And
Thank you.
It's great.
Thank you for saying that. That's very kind. I absolutely live an artistic life. All the work I do is art, and all of my hobbies are art as well. So it's just a lot of paint being thrown around over here, and it's good.
Yeah. Well, that's like funny because okay, my next question is about organization.
Oh, okay.
How important is it about organization? Like, not as an artist, but maybe this is seriously my question verbatim. How important is it for you to be organized, not just as an artist, but as a business?
It is very important. If you could see the amount of sticky notes around my monitor right here, you would know. I have calendars and weekly planners and sticky notes, and besides that, everything I own is incredibly organized, but my desk is like a war zone. And what I do is I'm normally working on multiple projects at once. So I have an extra little table in my studio, and I'll switch out my projects that I'm working on. So this, like, I allow my desk to be messy because I work the best that way. But as far as organization goes, like, I plan everything. I'm extremely type A.
Okay. Cool.
How about you?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of similar. I maybe possibly a little OCD because of the fact that I can't work unless it's clean. Or like, even preparing for talking with you today, I was like, okay, is this in place? It's like, you're never going to see it. You know what I mean? But like, I was like, everything kind of, to me, to work that way, I'm kind of like, I need it to be that way. But at the same time, I let myself get messy if I need to. It's a little hard in my studio because it's my apartment where I live. So, I'm tripping over stuff all the time, and sort of like the organization sometimes is out of necessity because it has to be a livable space too. But when I started doing this, I realized like I gotta be in the shit a little bit. Like I gotta be like the guy who realizes you're not getting a paycheck like every 2 weeks, and you're gonna have to figure this stuff out, and you're gonna like be a little uncomfortable, but like try to embrace it and like love this time. It's kind of like a daily reminder, like, because like what you're working for is worth it. And so, yeah, I would say just in general that I am organized, but I let myself in the creation process be as messy as I can be without getting paint on the floor here.
Oh, okay. Well, that's off the table for me. There's paint all over the fucking floor.
Yeah, there's a lot of drop cloths around here just to make sure that I get my deposit back when I move.
Yeah,
Okay.
I live in Tucson, so there's a lot of older people here. I also teach like watercolor classes to seniors, and one of them
Cool.
is an artist that, has lived in so many places and was a medical illustrator for her whole life. Anyway, I'm going on a rant here.
No, that's crazy. I never even heard of a medical illustrator.
Yeah,
Wow.
back before, they were able to like print photographs and have, really good detail in photographs. Everything would be drawn, for biology and medical and all sorts of stuff. And that's what she did her whole life.
Wow.
And I went to her apartment. She lives at an assisted living home, and just beautiful art everywhere. But she told me two things that have really stuck with me that I would love to share with you. And
Please.
one of them is about like the struggle of being organized as an artist and living this chaotic life, because it can be hard at times. And she basically just told me that you peak as an artist right before you lose your motor skills.
Wow.
And it's really heavy, but it's true. And all of these artists that I deal with at this senior home, they have cognitive decline. Their eyes aren't as good as they used to be. Their hands don't work how they want them to. But you work your whole life. It's not like an athlete where you're in your prime and then you kind of dip. You really go almost right up to the end with being an artist. So even though it's kind of a struggle, you're working your whole life towards it. So even if it's hard right now, fingers crossed, a little bit down the line, it will be a little bit more forgiving for you,
Yeah.
I'm not just saying you, just me and everyone.
Right. Yeah. Anybody listening. Yeah.
Anybody listening. But the other thing she said to me is kind of unrelated, but I really love this sentiment, so I'd love to share it too.
Please.
She was telling me about how her professor told her to paint this little patch of flowers outside back when things used to be magical and you could paint flowers outside for school, which is like not a thing anymore.
Oh, I used to love doing that. Yeah. I still have my pieces from that, which is great.
Yeah, that's an amazing time in your life. But she said that when she was younger, her teacher, she painted it quickly and turned it in. And her teacher was like, I can tell that you didn't spend any time on this. I want you to go back and repaint this, but this time I want you to paint it with love. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, me and you were just talking about how business oriented we have to be in this day and age. And so like, as I paint things now, I'm like, all right, I need to take a breath and make sure that like I'm channeling my love into what I'm painting,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying at the beginning, like finding that inner child that loved art, like that's the love that you put into it. And you can lose that over time if you're not, trying to do it too quickly for business or whatever. Like you really gotta like nurture that, don't you?
You really do, because you can get jaded pretty damn quick. It's a little bit of a crushing career, honestly, because there are a lot of people that would love to do it and it's not easy. So I always just try to remember that now. I'm like, okay, gotta take a minute.
The first, that's awesome. And I love that perspective. And it reminds me of, we were at the Art Institute of Chicago. Like it was stupid because I had like, it was like in like, the walk was like a second away from my apartment when I lived in the city.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like one of those lucky guys who got to go to the Art Institute every weekend, had my membership. And Marianne was traveling a lot. But Marianne is my girlfriend. She traveled a lot to come, and like she would do these like 24-hour trips, like, and I'd be like, let's go to the Art Institute all the time, But they had this Ivan Albright. Do you know the painter Ivan Albright at all? Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Ivan Albright, actually, now since you've been telling this story, they had his medical like journal. He was in, I think, the war, maybe it was even World War I, and that's what he did. He was on the battlefield drawing like biological stuff like you're saying, and that was like, it clicked. I was like, oh yeah, that's where I've seen this before. And of course, Ivan Albright, for anybody who is listening and doesn't know, is sort of like grotesque. He drew like sort of like the things that weren't so pretty about us, like the cracks in our skin and the way that we age. And he had oh my God, I hope if you ever, maybe you have seen it, but if you haven't, he did all these portraits throughout time of himself. And Marianne and I were watching, or sorry, looking through this one gallery, and all of them were amazing up until like his last like 3 that he did when he was in the hospital. And they were like literally like crayon drawings almost of like what it looked like when you were a kid. And and Marianne said that those were her favorite. And I was like, why? She's like, because this is like him when he lost it all but was still working because that's what he loved. And when you were saying that, I was like, that clicks so hard, even for like a master like Ivan Albright, you know?
No, that's incredible. I know when I work with some of these people that have dementia, like each week I prepare a project and we walk through step by step how to paint it so they go home with a finished painting. And some of the people, with like dementia, they will come up with their own version of the painting, and it's really beautiful. It's incredible, just art in general. Love it.
Yeah, that's great. Man, I love that part. I can't wait to tell Marianne about this. It was so great.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. You're so kind with your time today. But I only have a couple more questions, if that's okay. Yeah. We've talked about this, so maybe you could just talk about one that maybe comes to mind, because we've talked a little bit about what it's like to be challenged in this arena. But what are some or one of your biggest challenges that you face in the art world, and how were you able to overcome it and keep working and staying creative?
I think, just comparing myself to other artists. Every artist knows what that's like. But working in the art supply world, there are some incredible artists that you get to see just demoing, and you can talk to them, and sometimes they're really cool and sometimes they're really not cool. And it's very hard to not compare yourself to other people. I do it all the time anyway, even though I try not to. And I think it's just so important to try to stay true to yourself and just dissociate a little bit from what other people are doing, because you can get really wrapped up in like what's working for other people and kind of apply that to your own art. Like my husband doesn't follow any of the artists he likes on Instagram because he doesn't want to be influenced by them. And I'm like, what a strange way to look at it. And he's like, I can't look at it. And it's like, I think being able to appreciate it and still staying true to yourself is like the most effective way to go about it. But I think that would be probably my largest struggle.
Wow. Totally relate. It's like, that's why I try my best to, like, the social media thing can be harmful that way, and different things. And I feel like I remember talking to you when we first, when you did that, art class with me, and I was telling you about like how kind of it can get lonely. And I think comparison is like, when you compare yourself to somebody, that's like maybe one of the loneliest places you could be, because you feel like you're not worth it. And it's unfortunate because we should really look at that as inspiration more than we're looking at it as like, because you can't be anybody but yourself. That you are who you are. That's a good lesson for anybody listening. Not a lesson, but something to take away is like, be careful on how you compare yourself, because that's not fair to you.
It's not fair, and it's not helpful. And there doesn't even need to be 2 clones of the person you're comparing yourself to. Like, I'm sure people are comparing your art against theirs and wishing they could be more like you.
Right.
So perspective is a wild thing,
Yeah, it could happen both ways, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, I think we've kind of gone through this question. Like, you're, of course, like, so good. We've talked about everything that I was hoping and more. because like, is there anything you haven't done that you want to do? Because this is my question more was about like, is there anything that kind of frightens you? Meaning, is there a certain technique or job that seems like a steep hill to climb? And if so, how do you approach something like that? So, maybe we talked about that, but if you can think of anything,
Yeah, absolutely. I have a comic book series that I wrote and published back in like 2019. I finished it. And then I did a board game in 2020. And I was like very consistently cranking out passion projects, which is what I love. I'm a workaholic and I love passion projects. But over the last couple of years, I've been super busy with like real life grown-up work, which is great. But I feel like my passion projects have really suffered from it. Mm. And so over the last 3 years, I have been working on my new comic that I'm going to come out with. And I have been so crippled by like the idea of starting it because
that you don't even do it, right?
Exactly. Because I'm so worried about not doing it good enough. Mm. And what day is it? It's Thursday. Monday, I started painting it. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. So I think that's like the hardest part of my job is being able to say yes to my projects and no to taking on more work. Because you know how it is as an artist. Like we always want to take on the work because you don't know when you're going to get another job or when like the next thing is going to be.
Right.
We're kind of like the squirrels collecting the acorns like feverishly because we want to make sure we get through winter okay. We don't have that acorn like allotment once a week, Yeah. Like we don't have healthcare. Like we need to make sure that we have all this stuff saved up and we're good to go. So I think that's the hardest thing for me lately is just being like, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that for free. Or like, I need to be paid this much if I'm going to squeeze that in, or just like straight up no, if I don't want to do it. And I very rarely say no because I'm very responsible and I have to collect the acorns.
Yeah.
But I'm prioritizing my project right now. So I'm proud of myself for that.
Oh, good. You should be. And, there's a book I read. I'm in the same boat. But there's a book I read that talked about like, fuck you money. And I loved it because it was like, have a little bit of a cushion so that you don't have to. And it's really hard for artists to have that cushion. But once you do, you can get to that point where you don't have to take on so many jobs that are going to impede your personal projects that that matter so much. When I started this, I saw a guy in his backyard painting with his shirt off in the California sun. And I thought, wow, that's who I want to be for the rest of my life. Like the guy who's in his backyard painting. And I thought, wow, this is what is it. This is the life. And then I got here and it's not like that at all. Like I'm working so hard and I'm working 24 hours a day. And it's not like, I feel like, whoa, I was wrong about advertising. It was a lot easier than I thought because this is really hard to do it. And everything you're saying, I think is so helpful to people to hear.
Yeah. I'm friends with a bunch of like lawyers and doctors and engineers. And then I'm just like this weird artist and everybody's like, I don't understand why you work so much. And I'm like, your job may be hard in different ways, but we as artists have our own struggles that if you're not an artist or a creative in some sense, I really don't think people understand how like the stress that comes with being a freelancer. And really, I think at a lot of different levels too. Like if you're just starting out or if you've been in it for 15 years doing it, like it has its own challenges. So you're not alone if you're listening to this.
Right. Nowadays, I kind of turn off the there's no money in art. My grandma used to say that to me too. Like she was a wonderful artist and she's one of the people that inspired me to start. My mom too. But they would always be like, just don't go into that, Darren. Like there's no money into it, And so that's why I picked advertising because I could be an art director and I could do art every day. But it was like I really needed the pure mainline art like that I'm doing right now, with no boss. I'm my own boss. I'm the manager of my own life. Like Mary and I talk about a lot, like the president of my own life, And so like there are ways, but you have to be unafraid to go down those roads, right?
Absolutely. No gods, no masters, just you and the paint. And like you do a really incredible job with all the different ways that you like promote your art and share your art. And you have so many different styles, and it's very inspirational. So like,
Thank you.
Yeah, just
Yeah. It's good to talk with another person and feel connected that way too. So if you're listening to this, like, that's why I think you and I've had a good friendship over the years. I think we kind of understand each other that way, even though we haven't met in person.
not yet.
Following along, yeah, not we will, but following along the story is like, I think we're kind of following the same path, and we have, similar stories. I'm finding out as we're talking,
Oh, totally. Yeah, my grandmother's actually where I got into art too. She was never able to do art, but she sold her art at a gun shop here in Tucson. And so, pretty rad origin story there.
Yeah, totally. I just was I had a guy that I talked to on another episode, and we were talking about his grandma cutting his hair, and he's like, my grandma cut my hair into a mohawk, and I was like, you have like the most kick-ass grandma ever. But maybe this story trumps that, so
Oh snap, battle of the grandmas.
I know, I love it. Okay, well, again, I don't want to take up your whole day, and this is my last question, and I hope this is not too heavy. I don't think it is. You can answer it in any way you want to. Okay, so there's an old saying that artists live forever because the art doesn't die, but we do, right? Have you thought about that at all? And if so, what, if anything, would you like you and your work to be thought of after you're gone?
Interesting. I'm not too worried about legacy. Like I again deal with so many older people every week when I go and teach the watercolor classes, that like I'm faced with my own morality a lot, because they're my friends and they pass away, like they're all in their 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So I think about morality a lot, and so when I think about my own artwork, I hope that it brings people something, whether that be like inspiration or joy. They like looking at it, they like reading it. In some way, it kind of inspires them in the same way that reading comics inspires me. Like when I read a good comic, I'm like, hell yeah, like humans made this. This is so freaking cool. Like somebody poured their whole heart into this. Like this is awesome. And that's what I want my art to do for other people.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a very in the be here now, like in the moment sort of thing for you. Yeah. And it's funny. I like asking this question because mostly it's artists who are on this show, and it's always the same. It's really? Like nobody's like worried about their legacy, and I feel like in other walks of life people are, and there must be something pretty amazing about. I mean, of course you want to do stuff that matters, but it just matters in a different way than what like society says. Like, oh, I'm supposed to be Rembrandt or whatever, like talked about and be in galleries. It's like, oh, if you do the work and you work and is enjoyed, every day is a gallery to people who enjoy it, right?
Absolutely. That's a really great way of looking at it.
Yeah. Vic, I think that people are going to get a lot out of this, and you sharing your time is like really, really helpful for a lot of people that are artists. And I know I would have loved to listen to somebody's story like this when I was starting out. And even now it's helping me, like keep going, Yeah. So appreciate you sharing your time with us.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Darren, for having me. I'm just thrilled to be part of your like art journey, and thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, well, hey, everybody out there, even though Vic's not on Instagram a ton, you can follow her there or check out her stuff on YouTube. I'll put links to all that stuff. And again, thank you, Vic. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.